Good morning, guys. I am getting ready to plant my garlic. We are in mid to late November, and so I need to get these things in the ground now. I could have planted them earlier, and a lot of people in South Carolina that I've talked to have planted their garlic. However, this season we've been really warm. I mean, we just came out of the 80s last week. So I'm kind of glad that I held off a little bit. I don't want these things going crazy thinking that they're supposed to be growing right now. So I think waiting was a good choice. But before I can get my garlic in, I have to amend these beds. I have 3 beds here, and they were all planted with cowpeas during the summer season. And so I need to kind of get the remnants of those plants out, as well as I want to amend the soil. These beds have been planted in for a few seasons now, so I want to get some good mushroom compost and black cow compost in there. This is exactly the same way that I did it last year, and I had fantastic results. So I'm just going to stick with what I know worked, and we're going to do that. When I actually go to plant my garlic, I will end up amending each hole with some amendments, but we will get into that later. But first, let's get these beds cleaned up and the bagged soil into them so that they're ready to go for me. So garlic is the first thing that I'm planting into my garden for the spring and summer season of 2024, and it's pretty exciting. So when I'm getting ready to plant things, I have to kind of plan out where I'm going to be doing things. If I'm going to be rotating crops so that I'm not replanting in the same area, thinking about which beds had been amended last year and which soil might best suit the crop that I'm growing. So the reason that I picked these beds this year was because I had grown those cowpeas in them, like I had said before, during the summer season. Now, cowpeas are legumes, and they are great nitrogen fixers, which is fantastic. Garlic is a very heavy feeder, and so I want to make sure that I'm providing all of the nutrients that it will need to produce large heads for me. Because my goal is not only to use the garlic for culinary and medicinal purposes, but also to save for seed garlic for the next year for myself, as well as for friends and family, and possibly even selling some, because seed garlic can get very pricey. One of the reasons why I am cleaning these beds out so thoroughly is because garlic does not like a lot of competition. So I'm trying to remove all the roots from my cowpeas out of there so that my garlic doesn't have to compete with anything. And then I'm just adding in my black cow compost and the mushroom compost. One more important thing to think about when you're planting garlic is that it really does like a well-drained, airy soil. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing it in my raised beds. We have really heavy clay soil here, and so that can retain a lot of moisture, which is good for some crops, but for garlic, you really want some good drainage. So raised beds are really the way to go for me. After I had finished down at the garden, I came back up to the house to do some homeschool with the kids and just get some chores and things done. And then I decided in the afternoon, when everything was kind of slowing down, to prep my seed garlic. So basically what you do to prep it for planting is you just take your garlic heads and you want to go ahead and separate the cloves out. Now, you want to be careful not to remove the skin from each clove. However, if some of the skin comes off, that is okay. They'll be just fine. But just try to do your best to keep it on there. And you really only want to be choosing the biggest, fattest cloves. That way you are most likely to get the biggest heads of garlic from the larger cloves. So if you plant little cloves, chances are you'll get smaller heads. And I have such an abundance this year that I am going to be very picky with what I plant. But if you don't have a lot, feel free to plant every size clove that you have. You will still get a harvest off of even the smallest clove. So I finally made it back out here this afternoon. I do have to go milk my goats in about 30 minutes, so I'm hoping this won't take longer than that, but I constantly underestimate the amount of time that it takes to do these things. So I'm gonna try to get my garlic planted. I went ahead and prepared about 265 cloves, and so we're gonna go ahead and get those planted. So there's 2 types of garlic that you can plant. One is called hardneck and one is called softneck. Now there's a lot of different varieties of each of these that you can buy and grow, but mainly the difference between the hardneck and softneck is that the hardneck varieties sort of form a hard central stalk that keeps the plant nice and upright, while the softneck variety does not have that central stalk and just basically has leaves. Now with the hardneck variety, you do kind of get a bonus with that. You do get garlic scapes. And what we love to do with those is saute them up. They just have a really beautiful, mild, garlicky flavor, and they add so much depth to recipes. So not only do we saute them and eat them fresh, we also dehydrate them, and then I powder them up. And then anytime I'm making a soup, I will add in like a half a teaspoon of that garlic scape powder. And man, does that really make a difference. My mom, who lives in Maine, actually gave me this particular garlic a few years ago. Now, she didn't remember the specific variety, but we did know that it was hardneck when I planted it. And I was a little worried because Maine has a very, very different climate than South Carolina. I believe that she might be in zone 4B or 5A, and we are in zone 7B. So that's a huge difference. And so I was worried if the garlic would perform well here in the high humidity and not super, super cold winters. But it turned out just fine that first year. And I've now successfully grown it here. This will be my third season growing it. And what's really, really nice is that if you can continue to save seed from your plants, now this could be any type of plant, a pepper, tomato, really anything, and then you can grow that seed the next season, over time, the product that you get from that plant, the seeds that you get from those plants, they will have the qualities that you need to grow in your area. Basically, they become acclimated to your climate and they grow better in your climate because that's where they've grown for the past so many seasons. So after I finish prepping every hole, I am just going to take a handful or so, it might be about a couple of teaspoons of rock phosphate, and I'm going to put that into each hole. And then I'm just going to place my garlic into those holes. I'm going to place it flat end down and pointy side up. And what that rock phosphate is going to do for me is it's going to stimulate root development of that garlic, because that's really what I want right now in the season. I want that garlic to start producing really good roots for me so that in the springtime, when it warms up, it can really focus on taking up the nutrients in the soil and growing a nice big head of garlic for me. I'm not super concerned with seeing any shoots of garlic come up, but if they do, it'll be just fine. Last year we got down to 8 degrees and the garlic handled it just fine. And I know in other climates where garlic is grown, it gets even colder than that. So don't worry if you're seeing some of that stuff. You can throw some dead leaves on top of them. You can mulch them to give them a little bit of protection. Just really whatever you want to do there to protect them from some of the elements. But honestly, last year I didn't even mulch them and they were totally fine. Okay guys, so I got 3 beds done, almost 200 cloves of garlic planted. So that should be about 200 head of garlic if everything comes up, which really it should. I've never had a problem with garlic not coming up. I tried to plant only my largest bulbs, and if I go back in my garden journal and look and decide that I planted a lot less this year than last year, I'll probably go ahead and do another bed, just because I want to give myself the best chance of getting the biggest heads of garlic to save for seed garlic for the next year. I also did find a bit of potatoes in these beds this morning and this afternoon as I was planting, so we'll have some potatoes tonight for dinner. But anyways guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.